Good evening, everyone. This is Son from the UK. I'm a friend of Big Boss. Big Boss is obviously Dave. You all call him Dave. I call him Big Boss. I've known him for many years. We met through Twitter. Great guy, great mentor, great friend. I've learned a lot from Big Boss. I really have. I'm so happy and proud of him for doing this podcast, E.I.T.H.R. I really am. I know it's something he was talking about doing for a long time, and he's finally done it. But that's what I love about Big Boss. Whenever he says he's going to do something, he will do it. He's less talk and more action. So I'm really happy for him, and I'm really proud of him as well. It's very inspiring. I'm enjoying listening to the podcast as and when I can. I find it educational and I find it entertaining. It's just brilliant. It's such a great podcast to listen to. And I hope that everybody else who's listening to the podcast is also enjoying it. If you haven't listened to the podcast yet, I certainly do encourage you to start listening to it. You won't be disappointed. Because like I say, it's entertaining and it's also educational, because that's what you need. It's a good balance, which is what Big Boss has always been like. He's all about balance. So he's not always serious, but he's not always a joker. He just does both brilliantly. And he knows how to fuse them together as well. He knows sometimes you can make a bit of a joke about a situation and other times you can't. I just think he's brilliant at what he does, and I'm really happy for him, and I'm really excited to see how far this podcast will go. Good luck, Big Boss, and I certainly hope that all your viewers enjoy the show as much as I'm doing so.
You're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with your host, D-Cal.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? It is D-Cal hosting the E.I.T.H.R podcast, episode number 106. How's everyone out there in podcast land? Man, it's crazy. I don't know where you are in the world, but I want to say thank you very much for giving me a little bit of your time. Greatly appreciate it, man. We have some new listenership in New York. We have some Mount Vernon. What's good? We have some listenership right here in Rancho Cordova, which is in the Sacramento area. And of course, everyone from Sin City to Cincinnati, San Francisco to San Diego, down to Texas to Florida, Anaheim, New England, Wales, hello New Zealand. Appreciate you, Tokyo. Listen, I sincerely appreciate you guys giving me time to just listen to me for the moments that I am on the podcast. And so you can also follow us on social media at the E.I.T.H.R, T-H-E-E-I-T-H-R, on Twitter as well as Instagram. For those of you who are new, I'm going to give you a rundown of what the podcast is all about and how we do things over here. If you are a returning listener, you already know the drill. So I appreciate you guys being patient with me, giving it to the new booties. So the E.I.T.H.R stands for the elephant in the room, where we talk about and discuss certain topics that are usually difficult to have with your peers and friends, usually because they're short-sighted, one-sided, or narrow-minded. So what we do is try to look at everything from a multitude of perspectives. Even if you don't necessarily agree with what you're hearing here, at least you're going to be a little bit more informed with what it is that you're potentially disagreeing with. That's pretty much the bottom line. So you can check the E.I.T.H.R out on Spreaker, you can check it out on iHeartRadio, you can check it on Google Podcasts, you can check it out on Spotify. Hell, you can even listen to some archived episodes on YouTube. Just check out the GNS Inc., which is the parent company, THEGNSINC. You can also follow us under that same handle on TikTok. So, want to go get that out the way. Now, what we like to do here is also we do shout outs and we give words of, I call it inspirational and motivational, because we all need that, right? So I love to start off my podcast with something like that. So over 100 episodes, I've been doing my best to try to make your days, evenings, afternoons, whenever you listen, a little bit brighter. So shout out I want to give out to is my guy at the Arco gas station that I go to on a regular basis. I went in there to get gas not too long ago, and I was telling him about GNS ETV. So when I went to fuel up yesterday, he was like, "Oh man, I meant to tell you, I signed up for that website you gave me, man, that TV thing." I was like, yeah, man, appreciate that. I was like, yeah, man, it popping on at work. Let the whole world see it, So they don't have a TV there. But he said that, if they had a television, he definitely would play it there because he liked what he saw. So, that's all I'm asking for. So I want to give a shout out to him. There was also a young lady as I'm driving yesterday, and I'm getting ready to turn, I believe it was on 14th Street off of 65th. If anyone knows what that is, kind of like near College Town in Sacramento. And I was about to turn left on 14th, and I believe she was going to turn right on 14th, or it might have been 21st Street. One of the two. And she, flagged me down to get my attention, and I looked over, and she mumbled something. I couldn't understand what she was saying because we're in traffic, and we're turning the opposite way. So I'm thinking my gas cap is open. I'm thinking my blinker is on, which it was. So I'm turning. And she just wanted to say, "Hey, I'm going to check out your podcast today." So whoever you are, miss, I do not know your name. We were in passing the opposite way. I just want to say thank you very much for checking it out. If you did, and if you're checking it out today, I just want to give you your flowers. So I'm going to give flowers to those two people right then and there. On the Spreaker app, S-P-R-E-A-K-E-R, what you guys can do is you can also chat with me while I'm doing the podcast. And any of the episodes that you see, you can chat with me there so we can have a dialogue going within the app of the Spreaker. So we're going to get into a couple of things in this episode, man. One of the things we're going to talk about is this one documentary that I've seen, The 1%. I watched this documentary 10 years ago, and it's still mind-blowing. And I kind of go back in there and I find some nuggets to learn. I sent that to my A1 via Facebook Messenger, so she said she's going to binge that this weekend. We're going to also talk about some personal growth or other growth people choose to be more interested in. And we're going to talk about how some people use small negativities to paint the big picture. It's a very much of a pet peeve of mine, and there was a video on TikTok that sparked this topic for me to discuss with you guys, and that's what we're going to do. So it's your boy D-Cal, the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Word from the sponsor. Be right back.
Most t-shirts are simply cool to look at or look in. Well, so are ours. But ours also aim to send a message. They aim to put a name on obstacles that once stood in your way and aren't there anymore. Struggles that you turned into successes and crushed. You made it look easy. Shop at mile.today. Mile.today. www.mile.today. A GNS collection.
This is Sarah from Northern Cali, and you're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with D-Cal.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming back to the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Before we get started on the topic, I want to give a shout out to my peoples, the Manic Pixie Weirdo podcast. You guys got that? The Manic Pixie Weirdo podcast. My girl's been retweeting and liking a lot of my live feeds, and so I want to give her a shout out. You guys go ahead and check that out. She's in the semester cramming, as she put it. So things are kind of flying around hectically in her life. So I want to give you a shout out, young lady. Hope all is well with you. Hope you get a chance to spend time with the hubby. And I hope your podcast has much success doing whatever it is that you got going in the future for your peoples. So I just want to make sure I, show some love in return. So we're going to talk about this video that I saw on TikTok. And in my description for episode number 106 for the E.I.T.H.R podcast, I said how people will use small negatives to paint the big picture. And it was a video of a young lady who happened to be in Egypt. And she was experiencing, she was describing her experience with Egypt. And she despised it. She hated it. According to her description, it was nothing to what she expected it to be. Basically, no one should go there. The people were rude. It was violent. It was dirty. All these things, right? And in TikTok, there was a stitch. I believe that's what it's called, a stitch, where you play a certain video and you're able to intervene with that video. So there was a young man who's Egyptian, and his gripe was a very important gripe, and it's a gripe that I have when it comes to people using negative small pictures to paint the bigger one, right? So he basically said that she was in a very rough part of Egypt, and that Egypt is much larger than what she depicted in her video clip, and how her presentation basically gives the world a negative perception of Egypt and doesn't really show how beautiful it really truly is. And it's a false representation because it hurts the people who are actually the opposite of what she's describing. And everyone gets this perception, especially in today's world, right? Perception is reality. And I liken that to, again, to the Bay Area. That's where I'm from. And in the Bay Area, we're kind of like a family, right? You have one side that don't like each other. You have one side that don't like the other side. These two sides get along, but they don't like this side over here. It's kind of like a family feud. However, if anyone from outside the Bay Area has something to say about the Bay Area, then all four sides gonna fight you, kind of thing, right? So especially when I see people who aren't from here, but in today's world, the internet, everybody is brave and everyone can say what they want because they're hiding behind an avatar that's not really them. When I see videos of certain parts of San Francisco, or someone making a comment on a post that talks about San Francisco, they always refer to the 3 to 5 block area that always gets shown. Whenever someone refers to Oakland, they always show one particular style of video from Oakland. Always sideshows. Now, even though the hyphy movement was a thing, still is a thing, shout out Mr. Fab, because he's doing a hyphy movement tour, that's not all of them. Hyphy was a vibe. It is a vibe. Still is a vibe. But it's not just that, right? And what happens with that, people see that, and they associate anything related to that is that. We all have heard this, most of us have heard the saying, guilty by association. Okay, same thing. So when someone says they're from a certain city, you immediately, whether you mean to or not, you immediately associate them to whatever you associate to that city. It's human nature, right? So whenever someone talks about Oakland, the immediate thing they want to do is sideshows, hyphy movement, gunshots, right? And I have to tell people, I don't do that, right? So it's listen, man, if you're going to show the video of something, at least in my opinion, don't do. Matter of fact, there was this younger group talking about hip hop music, and the particular artist that they were talking about was Nas. And Nas is one of the most legendary hip hop artists in the history of the genre. My man, Queensbridge, New York. He's a legend. He's a living legend. LL Cool J-esque living legend. Run DMC, Boogie Down Productions, Rakim, all these cats, Melly Mel, Cold Crush, they were his icons. These are the people he looked up to. And he got into the rap game at an early age. So it's these young kids who basically saying that Nas is overrated and he's not that good. And he's only been around because, well, people were, which doesn't make any sense to me. He's only around because people make him relevant. I'm thinking to myself, well, everyone is relevant because people make them relevant. That's a stupid argument. But they picked one of the most least liked songs of his and to dictate his whole rap career. And there's so many albums that this man has given chapters. He's given us volumes. He's given us encyclopedias of game. And his style is very unique. His style is very, once you hear it, you'll recognize it. And dude is a wordsmith. He's a straight up wordsmith. Some people would say the same thing when it comes to any other artist who's been around for so long. LL Cool J is another rapper that people think is quote unquote over the hill. Wu-Tang, Redman, like all these people who's been in the game for 30 plus years, and you have to understand, for 3 decades, bro, and they're still selling out arenas. That's a good thing. I'm bringing this up because someone tried to use a small sample size of a particular song that many people aren't familiar with. That's probably one of the songs that no one's really feeling as much of him out of his entire catalog, and use that shit to judge his whole career. We do this on the basis as humans too, right? We would take somebody's small sample size of shortcomings and determine. We do this with our lives. We'll take one day out of our existence and that day will fuck up our whole week. We can't let the small negative dictate the big picture. We shouldn't let that be the case. And so when we watch these videos, ladies and gentlemen, try to keep in mind, man, that this person was probably there for 4 days, not 4 days. They're only showing you 45 seconds, right? And last episode, I believe it was 105. I even said, like, when you go someplace, man, meet maybe episode 104. I was like, meet somebody who is from a particular area that you want to go to, that you want to travel to. Build a trust with that person. Excuse me. So that way, if you choose to travel to that place, you're familiar with what things are. Ask them, what's the cool neighborhood? What's the rough neighborhood? Is there a certain time, a certain place you should be, you shouldn't be? Kind of do your recon that way. But experience it. I said this before, when I used to do Uber, and I would pick people up from San Francisco Airport or take them to San Francisco Airport. Their minds were blown while we're driving down the 101 and we look across the water. 50% of them will be like, what's that over there? The other 50%, I'm like, you see that over there? And they'll look. And they're like, what is that? Oakland. I remember this one lady, I was bringing her from SFO into the city. And she was from Kansas City, Missouri. Not Kansas City, Kansas, but Kansas City, Missouri. And when I pointed it out to her, her jaw hit the bottom of the floor. And she was like, I knew Oakland was close to San Francisco, but I didn't know it was that. It's different when you see the shit on a map versus seeing it in reality. So when she saw Oakland was right there, you see the city from the 101. It's like, yeah, you see that bridge right over there? She's like, is that the first thing? Is that the Golden? No, it's not the Golden Gate. That's the Bay Bridge. That's the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge that connects the city to the town. And so this is back when the Raiders were still in Oakland. So we would have our little banter going back and forth about the Chiefs and the Raiders and so on and so forth. But she didn't know it was so close. Many times when cities promote themselves, naturally they want to highlight just themselves. Because San Francisco is a tourist city, big time. Vegas is a tourist city, major, right? But in many cases, all they know is what they see just in front of them. So I just ask for people to be very mindful what you're putting this. You can't dictate what people understand, and you cannot control what people will comprehend. True. Anyone who's listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast right now, I just ask for you to be cognizant, be conscious, be aware. Whatever you see, something was before and something happened after. So this is part of, right? This is a piece. Ask the right questions to get the correct answers, right? Because an uneducated person would focus on the wrong answer. But an educated person would also focus on asking the right questions. So it's one of those things where I've always wanted to check out Egypt. And if I didn't think the way I thought, I'd probably scratch that shit off my bucket list. Right? And there's certain places everywhere like that, right? If you don't have the experience, you don't have the understanding. If you don't have the understanding, you don't have the courage. And trust me, your boy is not telling you to go to, Alondra in Los Angeles and wear burgundy. I am not, I'm not telling you to go to some place and not be aware of, because there's certain spots don't give a damn about where you're from. You're going to learn the consequences the hard way. But at least be aware that there is possibly more to it than what you see. And there are a lot of motherfuckers who out there who just do and say things for shock value. Keep that in mind as well, right? It's your boy DK here at the E.I.T.H.R podcast, episode number 106. You can get us at the social media of Twitter and Instagram at E.I.T.H.R. E.I.T.H.R. My apologies. E.I.T.H.R. So, also, before we move on to the next segment, I keep forgetting this because it's still brand freaking new to me. 916-282-9372. 916-282-9372. That's the number for the E.I.T.H.R podcast. You can text me topics and things that you would like for me to bring up on the podcast. You can call me or text me anything you want to talk about on the podcast. If you have Skype, you could attempt to FaceTime me if I'm ever able to do FaceTime, Or I can take the conversation that we're having and we can put it on the episode of the podcast. That way the world can get the conversation. All right? 916-282-9372. That's the phone number for the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Okay? So we're about to go ahead and get into the next topic, which is, this was going to be a favorite one of mine. Throwback. So, as I said, years ago, I saw this video on YouTube. I stumbled across it on accident. Called The 1%. And after a while, YouTube said, you know what? We're gonna make motherfuckers pay for it. And then they charge you. Well, whoever it was, shout out to them. Someone found the video and uploaded it again for free. So it's the 1%. You can either put the number or you can type it out. And percent is typed out. It's a documentary on the social gap between the rich and poor. It's produced, narrated, and created by the great-grandson of the Johnson & Johnson family, Jamie Johnson. So he is going in doing his variation of investigation to find out, why is there such a large discrepancy between rich and poor, and why does the gap continue to get larger and larger? I know a lot of people have their opinion about it, about why. Some of you may be on the right track. Some of you could be way the fuck off. But I can tell you right now, man, there is a reason why this gap exists. But it goes into detail. It goes into detail regarding who's involved, some detail how it got involved. And you meet different variations of people and heirs of a certain family and their partake. This is actually a second video that Jamie Johnson has done. The first one, it was right around his 21st birthday. And in this video at the time, he's 27. I do not remember the first video. But the first one, which I saw after the 1%, which again was the second video he made. That particular video, the first one he made, you meet heirs of the family, like all his friends. And I don't remember the name of the people because it's been so long since I've seen or heard it. I just remember what they talked about and their relation into the world. And it was one dude, out of all his friends, there were like two of them I felt really bad for. Now, I'm not talking about the 1%. We're going to get back to that in a quick second. But the first one, where he was like the great-great-great-grandson of the person who, air quotes, started the railroad in America and out of New York. And the other one, he's like the heir to publishing. Like his family owns all these different magazines. Like a lot of the magazines that you subscribe to at one point when magazines were a thing. Like the tangible book magazines, right? His family owned like 20 of them. And he was the one who was worth the most money out of the whole group. I believe his family value, if I remember correctly, was like 20 billion. If that. And it was flat out crazy that thing. And I felt bad for him. I really, really, truly did. Because once you watch the video and you kind of learn who young people are, that James Frank, once you kind of get to know of them, you realize that the world we live in is very similar to the world we live in. Very similar. I know a lot of people don't want to do that. But it's out and about in the city. No big deal, just out of town. And he had on some outfit, nothing crazy, nothing, that would necessarily quote unquote draw attention. But his family, this is bad. His family like hit him up, like saying, "What were you wearing? Why were you wearing this? What were you thinking?" And like he had on these shoes, which is fine, but he had on like green socks. Like I don't know what shade of green. I can't remember. They were like dark green, forest green, or like a bright ass neon green. I can't remember which one it was. But you can see the socks with the outfit, and clearly, like it might have been like laundry day, and he didn't have any clean socks, so he just threw his socks on or whatever. But the photograph that someone took, they sent it to the people in within their circle, and it listen, I'm not bullshitting you, because dude's face was so upset, where they told him that this was embarrassing because they got made fun of. He got mocked and made fun of, and they take that kind of thing personally, right? Everything is image and perception. So they basically told dudes, like, listen, if you do anything embarrassing to the family again, we're cutting you out the fucking family. We're cutting you out the will. We're cutting you out the trust. We're cutting you off. And Jamie, I remember, because Jamie was worth like, at that time, like 200, 400 million, somewhere in that range. Believe it or not, he was the broker one of the friends, if you want to put things in perspective of ranking. He was like at the bottom. I think he was like 400, because it was this one young lady who was new money, who took him to this country club where they played tennis, and nobody liked her or her family. And she told Jamie, because we're new money, people don't know us. They don't trust us, because our family has recently been new. And at that time, recently, I want to say like maybe a couple of decades. So the family wasn't deep rooted as some of these other names within that circle. And there was a black dude there, and Jamie was like, "Oh my God, is that like a black guy?" Because he was shocked that there was a POC there. And she kind of looked at him nonchalant with a smile on her face, like, "Yeah, he's probably like a pro. He's training, coaching. That's the only reason why he's there, because he's a coach." Right? You have to see the video to understand it, and it's kind of like, damn. Like, damn, right? Like, it's most of them are so oblivious, but they choose to keep that gap amongst them because they don't want to deal with the problems that we have to deal with. And they teach their children to not get involved. The gentleman I talked about was the railroad. I remember watching the video. He was kind of like, I want to do something. But basically, like, his family blocks him from making any type of move to change the needle in the economic status. So he basically kind of denounced himself from the family, got married to this one woman. I don't remember if they changed his name or not. That I do not remember. But dude lives like a straight up modest life now. It's almost to the point where the money sickens them because of what their families do. And there was another kid who was very hesitant, very reluctant to talk to Jamie in this documentary, right? And as the documentary goes on, towards the middle of it, he starts to open up. And his family was part of the gaming industry. No, we're not talking about video games. No, we're not talking about apps. I'm sure they're involved in that now because of the date of when the documentary was done. But I'm talking about golfing. I'm talking about horse racing. I'm talking about fencing, like big money gaming. Like his family just kind of controls and runs that world, right? He didn't want. He gave an example of how he got accepted to Brown, not because of academics, but because of financial influence. And he basically said on this documentary, like he was cut up in school on purpose just to see what they would do to him. And I don't exactly remember what he did, but he did something to where Brown expelled him. He literally got kicked out of college. His family, I kid you not, made a phone call to somebody. And then here comes another letter from the university saying, maybe we can work things out if we can compromise, if he can do this, and we'll do that, and we'll call it square. I'm like, yo, how much pull did this motherfucker got? He's laughing about it because it's embarrassing. He's like, you can't even kick me out if you want to. This is a joke. Like there's nothing these heirs can do and get reprimanded for it. That's a very dangerous mindset to have. And I had an episode where I even talked about what's more dangerous, the person who nothing ever will happen to me, or the person who everything always happens to me. Which person is the most dangerous one? It's a weird ass mindset, right? So in the documentary, he starts to open up to Jamie and start talking about how he thinks this whole system is bullshit. He thinks the whole system is unfair. He thinks the system, because people think because I can just do. I can't do. Because I have eyes on me too. And if I hang around somebody who my family doesn't approve of, I can literally get kicked out the family and left with nothing, where my name doesn't mean anything. And if my family wants to lock me out of certain circles, those circles would not budge on my entry. They won't. It's like I said, it would do with the socks. Same thing. He was like, I have to dress a certain way when I go out in public in case someone sees me and takes a picture or runs back and reports what I'm wearing or what I'm doing or who I'm talking to. Imagine you just walking down the street somewhere in New York and, my man, do you have the time? And he gives you this judgmental scowl and walks off. It isn't because he doesn't like you. It's probably because if someone took a picture of him talking to you, the immediate assumption is you're woke and you're trying to change the world. We need to get rid of you from the family so no one even believes we think like you. All you doing is telling this person what time it is or which route that bus goes. Or he's saying it's your name because you look like someone I went to school with. It's where in many cases they have to distance themselves, otherwise they lose their status. There was another young lady, her family was into fashion. And this woman would just blow money. It was ridiculous, yo. Like she would just go, you talk about an impulsive buyer. Like if she saw $500 sunglasses and she wanted them, there was nobody that could tell her handler, her financial advisor, nothing. She dated somebody, if I remember correctly. She dated someone and told him to monitor her spending. And she broke up with his ass because he did exactly what she told him to. Why? Because ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do. Not even my parents. And at these ages, in this documentary I watched, man, these, yo. At early ages, these kids are taught. I'm talking about 4, 5, 6 years old. Prenup. The young lady who was in the fashion that I just got through talking about with the impulsive buyer. her and dude from the gaming world, they basically go on to say their family instills in them at an early age. People like us on this side of the tax bracket, all we want to do is leech them for their wealth and take from their family and leave them with nothing. That's what these kids are told at an early age. It's wild. It's so wild because it makes you kind of realize, at least here in America, what everything is truly based on, right? And in that video, the first one, it talks about how the Johnson & Johnson got their money. Yo, you think the people you see in the hood are gangster? You think people you see in the projects are gangster? You should see how these motherfuckers got their money in the day. That's gangster. It's crazy. So a lot of the things that we deal with today, in my opinion, is them afraid of karma. They are afraid the chickens coming home to roost on their watch. So they do things to make sure we don't come up, because if we come up, that's their downfall, right? It's so crazy. So they put up these obstacles so people understand. Many will get discouraged, and the few who don't get discouraged will give you what you want, so you become one of us, because that's the system. That's the system. So in moving forward now to the 1% documentary that you can see on YouTube, he talks to the family advisor and talks to the top chief. This thing is so excuse me, mind-blowing, bro. It's a mind-blowing fucking documentary to watch, right? And I say this, you have to watch the documentary with an open mind. You have to watch it with an open mind. Because there's little nuggets in this film, in this documentary, that you think they're one way when completely they're the opposite. And then you grew up hating them, and then you come to find out, oh, wait a minute. So dude is actually trying to do his best? Yeah. But them people wouldn't let him. So he spent the rest of his life miserable because he knows the secret. He knows what's behind the Da Vinci Code. And these people got about as short and curlies, bro. The moment you do anything, we're going to tug and pull on them. Squeeze you where it hurts. So imagine knowing the secret that can bust everything out and set the people who are shackled free. But the people who got the keys to the shackles don't want them to be free. And they'll throw your ass in shackles too. Just so that way they can keep the advantage of the system in which they created. It's crazy. But with all that said and done, keep an open mind, because, in my opinion, the way I see it, when you decide to play the game of finances, whether it's promoting within your company, starting your own company, housing, finances, you understand the game is set up for certain people to not fail, but not win. The game is also set up to make you as discouraged as possible, so you do give up. That's the reason why when it comes down to business, I'm always talking about collaborate with people. Because if you and this person and these people with common futures can gel together, and kind of help each other get over that hump. It doesn't matter which person blow, because all of you are coming together. That's how you cheat the system. Shout out to the Warriors, the strength in numbers. Right? If more people thought that way, more of us could advance that way. This is a poor podcasting because the moment I hit that way with emphasis, I'm pointing, just so you know. Right? They go into gentrification, what it is, why it is, all that fun stuff. And I said on one of my earlier episodes, the reverse of gentrification is industrialization. Right? Industrialization. What that does is you put the money back in the community amongst the people who dwell in that community. And you build up the equity, making it difficult for outsiders to come in. Gentrification, people run down the neighborhood, so outsiders come in to push you out, and they raise it up to generate the profit. Ultimately, that's what that does. There are so many secrets, ladies and gentlemen, to finances. They don't teach it in schools for a fucking reason. That's why. That is why. It's the game. It's the game. This documentary, The 1%, is such a good documentary to watch. If you're just, let me just pop this on right quick. And I'm old school with it. If you're able to, pen, paper, jot down notes, bro. Jot down notes. And use these notes to teach those who are willing to learn the game. Your kids, your nephews, your nieces, anybody you know that's somewhat financial savvy, anybody you know who is trustworthy. I do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. It's your boy D.K.L., the E.I.T.H.R podcast, Instagram and Twitter, E.I.T.H.R. And you can hit us on the phone line, 916-282-9372. Now I'm going to get into this right here. Personal growth and attention. I put this on social media. And you can go ahead and like this. You guys can screenshot it. You can share it. I greatly appreciate it. And it reads like this. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. That's the motivational, inspirational I forgot to give earlier. I totally forgot. Spaced out. I got excited about the episode and totally got to do the motivational, inspirational right after I gave the shout out. So that's on me. I fumbled. I got ahead of schedule. Motivational, inspirational one more time. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. Let me just dwell on that before I get to the next thing. That's what I try to do as a human being, is empathy, right? If you are not willing to walk in that woman's heels or that man's shoes, you have no right to tell them what path to take. You just don't. You just don't. Sorry. Because many people will look at you and sit back and say, damn, you like to take the difficult path. You like to take the hard path. You like to take the rough path. People don't realize you had no other option. Like, they say that to you as if you're like, you make it seem like I had a choice of which path to take. No, there's always going to be somebody who's going to sit back and say, you did have a choice of what path you take, and you chose to take this path. They don't understand your circumstances. No, they want to understand your circumstances. They don't want to understand it because they don't have empathy. But to understand what one is going through doesn't make you weak. It makes you fucking relatable. That's what that is. It makes you relatable. You understand their pain. what they're going through, possibly what they came from, and where they're headed based on situations. That's why when I talk to people, I try to keep that in mind. Now I'm going to sit back and admit, one of my things, like I said, one of my pet peeves, I hate being stared at. I hate being gawked at. I hate being leered at. If you think you recognize me, if I look familiar, if you're trying to remember me from someplace, that's one thing. But it pisses me off. You stare. I know you're staring. I kind of blink distant off in my car, and I turn slowly at you and make eye contact, and then you turn away like nothing happened, and you're like, what's up, with your head. Like, you're annoying. And I hope your tail light goes out. It's stupid. But I have to keep in mind, me not giving an attitude to those individuals could change those individuals' day for the better. I've shared my story on the bus with the lady plenty of times. And sometimes those folks just need to see somebody not combative and not bring an attitude towards them in return. Because that might be the environment in which they're from. So I personally need to do better at responding to people who do my pet peeves. But it's very hard when I'm in a parking lot and there's a whole 3 rows of no cars, and you bring your funky ass right next to me and have the nerve to look in my car and then look away when I look at you as if you, like, where? Really? I need to do better at not taking it so personal and let it go. It's a parking space. I can either get out my car and go do what I gotta do, or I can get in my car and relocate myself. I need to do better. But I understand, because I'm empathetic, there are people out there just like me who got so many things going on that it's the dumbest shit that triggers you. And everyone's looking at you like, what is your problem? Right? That's where the empathy comes into play. That's where I have to have an understanding. You need to do better at controlling your outside face's voice. You got to do better at controlling your face's outside voice. I need to train my face to use its inside voice more, because my face's outside voice way louder than my mouth. And damn, I know we all can improve on that. That was my motivational, inspirational. I should have done in the beginning of the podcast. I apologize on that again. I just saw it and I was like, damn. So, what I'm trying to get myself into was this right here, where I put this on the Twitter account at the E.I.T.H.R. How many of you pursue self-development and personal growth as much as you would ass and attention? How many people pursue personal growth and self-improvement as much as you would ass and attention? As a guy, we are on the hunt for ass on a regular basis. I get it. It feels good. It's squishy. It's nice. It's perfectly shaped in many different cases. It comes in different sizes, right? Put it in yoga pants. It's so pretty. But what about that ass-shaped heart that's within your ribcage? What are you doing to fulfill that one? Right? What are you doing to make that improve? Very few of us are doing anything in regards to that. How many of us in a situation look at ourselves at, okay, this is what I could have done to make this better? How many of us do that? Raise your hand. I didn't think so. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, Regina. Shout out to Regina at BioLife. And whenever you point a finger at somebody, 3 of them are pointing back. You don't believe me? Point your finger and look at your hand. Whenever you point at somebody, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. Don't believe me? Look at your hand. So, one of the things that keep you humble and grounded is whenever, this is from personal experience, whenever you're doing something, man, what could you have done to fix that? What could you have done to change that? What could you have done to avoid the whole situation? Oh, there's nothing you could have done? Bullshit. See, one thing I learned when training to get my very first business, when you run a company, it doesn't matter what happens, it's your fault. And life is your business. You are the CEO. You are the top producer. You are the least producer. You are employee of the month. You are the biggest slacker. You are the highest income earner. You are the deadbeat broke person. It's you. Life is your business. You run it how you see fit. So whenever something goes wrong, you have to be able to look at yourself and say, this is what I should have done differently. This is what I should have done to improve. This is what I should have done to avoid this, that, and the other. Right? Always. Always. But instead, we live in a world where whatever I do, it's your fault. Because had you done something different to accommodate me, I would be inconvenienced. This is the world we live in. Right? So, once you understand it's actually your fault, you're responsible for avoiding situations. You are responsible for avoiding certain groups. You are responsible for making sure certain tasks get taken care of. It's your fault. Even if certain things are out of your control, you have to take the responsibility to say, okay, I'll be better prepared for this next time. Right? Whenever there's an altercation, I have to understand, if my face would have just used its inside voice, they wouldn't have heard what my face was saying to irritate them. Now my mouth has to get into some shit that my face didn't have to start. Simple as that, right? Certain people would do things because they're just having a day, and the environment they live in tells them, start some shit and see if someone says something. And if they do say something, handle it. Because survival of the fittest, they gotta be tough. Physical is how they display their superiority, their dominance, their way of logic. So one has to just do better at making sure you do self-development. You look at yourself and say, what is the situation that I need to do to prevent me from having worst case scenarios, such as this, that, and the third, right? How often do you read self-improvement books, right? Brian Tracy says, the environment you put around yourself, that's the way you think. The people you talk to, the people you listen to, what you listen to. Anytime you put on a song, what does your mood do? It changes, right? When you're in a certain type of mood, what do? You put on certain type of music. When you watch a film, typically what do? You get caught in that character, you get caught up in that plot. Okay, so if you are in a mood for self-improvement, you might want to start listening to, watching, observing, speaking in a manner of things that are going to self-improve. It takes 3 weeks to create a habit. It takes 3 weeks to break one. Really difficult. Not at all. Really simple. Extremely so. But it isn't easy. So one has to understand when you're dealing with self-improvement, it's one of the most difficult things in the world because you are holding you accountable, right? You are dealing with you. You are asking you, why'd you do that? And if you start to blame somebody else because you need a scapegoat, that's why a lot of people, when you ask them certain questions and they don't know where to go, their first thing to do is to lash out in frustration and anger. It's that uncomfortable feeling they have because there's no one else to blame and they have to accept that responsibility. That's where the frustration comes from my experience. Whether dealing with people or just dealing with myself. When you get caught doing something and you have to respond with an answer of why, and there's nowhere else for you to go but truth, it is extremely uncomfortable feeling. Your body temperature might rise, your heart rate's going to go up, you might start to sweat, you feel like this anxiety feeling. Some people might even feel confrontational because they feel like they're being cornered. Well, you're being cornered in accountability. But it's very difficult, man, to deal with that. So how many of you are pursuing personal growth and self-improvement as much as you pursue ass and attention? I have this saying, people rather be entertained than educated. People rather be entertained than educated because being entertained is my escape from the reality that I'm trying to avoid. In some cases, we need that. But when you are attempting to permanently escape the reality, you're always going to be pissed off when you have to come back to it. Fucking face it, man. Face it. But again, I'm going back to my original thing when I said the collaborative effort. When you face that reality with a partner, I'm not even talking about romantic partner. I'm talking about partner in crime. Somebody who you can talk to, you can just bounce ideas with. Someone who's in the shit with you. Somebody who they're going through their issues. And you both are like, man, we need to, yeah, we do. I bet, let's do it. And you partner up. Life is a business. You're the CEO. Your network is your net worth. Understand that, right? And there's a video on our TikTok at the GNS Inc. with Marlon Wayans, where he talked about his 2 cars that he owns. And if you really believe what he's saying, which you should, because it's Marlon Wayans, and that man is straight as an arrow when it comes to being upright with people. None of this shit matters, right? When it comes to the superficial or materialistic, right? The only person you should be in competition with is yourself. And I've always said this for the past decade. Compete, but never compare. You want to have a friendly competition and being better than somebody, but you never want to compare yourself to that person because you don't know what that person's going through. You don't know what that person's got. You don't know who that person knows. You don't know what that person's about. That person may not have the resources you have. So to compare them to you can be a handicap. It can be a major detriment. It might make you think you're better than really what you are. Or it can make you feel as if you're more of a failure than what you really are. So going back to when I was in the fragrance business, what we would do is we all had numbers. And everyone knew who the top salesperson in your group was based on the number that they got. The better you were, the higher number you got. Common sense. So we always made a goal is who would hit their number first. Done. The people who were better They always gave crumbs to the people who were not as skilled on how they could hit their number faster. Right? People who weren't as skilled had no problem in assisting those who were with closing a sale. Everybody was out for the same goal. We had the common future, right? So we collaborated. So if I have a number of 5 and you got a number of 3, if you hit your 3 before I hit my 5, hey, good on you. That's hustle. Now do me a favor, go get you more. Match mine. Surpass your expectations. Do better. Stay on that level. Stay on that grind. Keep pushing. Be better than me. Because once I see you being better than me, now I got to ante up on my horse and be better than me. Because I got to keep you just right there. I got to stay ahead. But I need you to push me by you surpassing me. And it's a friendly competition. Personal growth, self-improvement, right? We talked about guilty by association. Be guilty about the people you associate with, or as guilty as succeeding in whatever it is that you're accomplishing or whatever you're attempting to accomplish. That's what it's boiled down to, right? If your goal is ass, cool. But don't knock somebody's hustle if their goal is cash. If you are trying to build an empire, cool. Don't knock the hustle of someone who'd rather do a 9 to 5. Because that 9 to 5 brings that person peace. And they won't knock your hustle. Matter of fact, your business refer people to that 9 to 5 where they work at, and they can take care of them. Once they build a rapport and get a relationship, they should toss that bone back to you if what you offer services that customer. Now you're working hand in hand. That's a partnership. That's a referral business. You guys always got to be thinking outside the box. But you don't know that if you don't grow. It's your boy D.Cal here at the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can check us out on gnsetv.com. The streaming service, TV service is free subscription. Right now we got the calm within the storm, white noise, relaxation type of playlist going on right now. So you can put that on your laptop, your smartphone, your smart TV. Close your eyes and zone out. You have hailstorms, rainstorms, you have nature, you have ocean crashing, you have all kinds of cool stuff. We're going to be uploading a new playlist in the next few days. So gnsetv.com. You can also follow us on TikTok at the GNS Inc. as well as you can follow YouTube. Just search at the GNS Inc. It's your boy D.Cal at the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Appreciate your time, and we out. This is D.Cal or GNS ETV, and I'm here to give you some words of encouragement. Whenever you come across a crossroad and you're in a situation that you don't know what you need to do, or there's decisions that you have to make and you're not too sure what decision you should pick. I was given this advice as a teenager and it's always stuck with me. And that advice is this: whatever your situation or your circumstance is, when you're looking for advice, take your best friend, your absolute best friend, or closest relative to you, and you put them in a situation. What advice would you give them? Whatever that advice is, follow your own advice. And remember, if you can't follow the advice that you give yourself, how much weight do you think